I found another woman in his bed at 4 a.m. Then he blamed me. I am still so numb. I never suspected a thing. We normally connect on Thursdays, as well as other days per week, but this Thursday, yesterday, he told me he was meeting up with his dad to watch the game. No biggie. I was happy for him. I ended up snagging an OT shift to kill the time. I'm a first responder, and thought I'd surprise him by stopping in. Always been an open door policy, he encouraged it. I walked up to the door after parking in the garage and found it locked. His truck was there, lights on. I'm confused. It's 4:15 a.m. I start trying to call him. He lives an hour from me, 45 minutes from my work. Going home barely crossed my mind. I want to see my man. I called 4 times. I'm picturing he's sleeping right through every call. I walk over to the bedroom window and tap lightly, then head back to the door and knocked. I could hear the dog whining. He loves me and wanted to be let out to me. My man finally comes to the door. He seemed frazzled. Eyes were bloodshot. I'm thinking I just woke him up. I start apologizing, sorry for waking him. I just really wanted to see him. As I'm reaching to wrap my arms around his neck and kiss him, he stops me. I'm confused. I can't, Wah? What do you mean? Are you SI dash? There's someone here. The gears were slow to process this. Who? His dad? His daughters? Wait, in your bed. Yes. What the F asterisk asterisk K? I'm not convinced. He's lying, right? I'm standing here, an hour from home, at 4:30 in the morning, being told that my boyfriend has another woman in his bed. 2 weeks ago, he's hinting at marriage. WTF happened? Why? I'm so dumbfounded. I made it home safe after packing 70% of my things. He had to pack my bag for me since there was another woman in his bed who definitely heard the interaction, while he gave me half-assed apologies, while also trying to blame me for what he did. You've been off for 2 weeks and that he planned to end things this weekend, citing we aren't compatible, which was a surprise considering the sex and I love yous. I cannot believe this. I feel so used and stupid. I know it's trying to make sense of nonsense. I just feel sick. Update. Many were asking how long we were together. It was only 6 months, so thankfully nothing too long, I guess. My ex had an affair on me after 10 years together, and it was absolutely devastating. We tried to work it out for almost 2 years, but we agreed it wasn't working and split. This was my first relationship after that. So I went back for my things about 12 hours later. One of my male co-workers with a truck drove me, and I'm so glad he did. I'd been awake for 30 hours and wasn't comfortable driving, let alone going alone. It was a good chance at reflection. I was dismissing red flags. He spoke a big game, but wouldn't always follow through on the emotional support, which I really need in my support circle being a paramedic, but I started noticing he always turned the convo to be back about him. He didn't have a stable job and was complaining he never saw his kids. They're 1.5 hours away. He always spoke poorly about how his dad cheated on his mom for years, destroying the family, and he'd never wanted to do that with his ex-wife, and because he wanted to, they eventually split, let alone anyone he was with. Promised he'd never put me through what my ex did. He always spoke about how he is all about communication and he has emotional intelligence, something most people don't have. Then I thought back to when we first got together. His buddy, a mutual buddy who was shipping us getting together for years before we finally did, pointed out his current friend the day after we slept together. At the time, I thought we were a one-time thing, and I didn't know what to make of that comment. I regret now not approaching her and asking a "hey girl" moment. It would have confirmed my suspicions now, that he just sticks around for the fun part, adrenaline of a new fling that might include cheating and the honeymoon phase, and leaves when things get hard/real. When I arrived to collect my things, I didn't just walk in. I knocked and waited, and the moment he opened the door, I was angry. I started collecting the things I'd left. Mind you, realized how much I ended up buying for this place. Vacuum, steamer, countertop dishwasher, kitchen island trolley, air purifier he used to smoke in the house, and all sorts of other things to make the house a home. Things his daughters loved. I wanted to go fully petty mode and take the entry rugs and the garbage can and the shower filter. He lives in the country and is on a well, but I didn't. During all this collection, I mentioned a few things. I called him a coward. He wasn't man enough to just talk to me first. Told him his worst fear about turning out like his dad came true, and I hope he's proud of himself. He was defensive right away, saying because I'd been off, he was going back through his checklist, and I wasn't meeting what he needed, said I was ghosting him and he needed to see and hear from me more. I asked how 2 to 3 times a week wasn't enough, and he said this last week it wasn't. So I asked him how come that was my responsibility? For 6 months, I would drive the 2 hours round trip to stay there 2 to 5 nights a week. Where's the balance? He only came into the city 3 times in 6 months, and once was out of convenience for him. He met me for dinner when he was already in the city for other plans. This man then had the audacity to state, "Oh, so you're keeping score?" For the record, I work 3 jobs. FT paramedic, PT admin for a hospital, and I ref semi-pro hockey. He knew this before we got together, and we talked about me leaving one job if we committed, and I had some help and security, financial/with my dogs. After 3 months of dating, I bought a calendar and wrote it all out for him, so he could see when I was where, and we could plan accordingly. I asked him if it made his ability to cheat easier. He said he isn't like that. This was the first and only time, and he was going to tell me, when he broke up with me on Sunday. I asked how much overlap there was between me and his last girlfriend. He denies having one before me. I remembered him texting me he had loose Insta tie-up, but that he wanted to be exclusive and give this a go. So I asked what exactly that meant, and he told me exactly that. During the whole thing, I started second-guessing myself, questioning my grasp on the situation. He kept telling me I was short and barely replied to his messages, that he didn't want to be with someone who ghosted him. I guess sleeping between night shifts was a big no-no for him. I scrolled back through my phone and our messages asking him where the ghosting was, and he then tried to change the subject, caught in another lie, I guess. I asked how he'd feel if we switched up the roles. Then I asked, imagine it was one of your daughters who drove an hour excited to see her man, to find him the way I found you. Then she had to drive an hour home bawling her eyes out after being gutted and then blamed for his actions. He just stared at the floor saying, I wasn't thinking. I did start teetering though, questioning my reality. He kept saying I showed up here always in a sour mood. I asked for dates that happened, which didn't include Valentine's Day. I recognize I wasn't great company that day, and I was in one hell of a low mentally, and I did tell him that. And he couldn't give me examples. He started saying I've always been in fight or flight mode with him. I still couldn't believe what I was hearing. When I was ready to start collecting the big things, he asked if I needed help. Without hesitation, I said nope. I have my friend to help me. To which he snarkily replied, oh right, you never need help. And I said, right, actually just not from you. After I collected all my things, I turned back and said, I really do love you, you know. This is shit. And left. And cracked as soon as I got back in the truck, bawling all over again. I'm thankful my friend and coworker was there. He was able to confirm to me this man was gaslighting me, and he brought up all the instances that he was contradicting himself. He reminded me of all the things I am and have done for this man with no reciprocation, like driving 2 hours round trip, an hour after a 12+ hour overnight shift, and not to cry too much over a man who let me do all that without any sort of reciprocation or appreciation, because a real man wouldn't have treated me like any of this. Man, I am lucky to have friends like him. The devastation is different than with my ex. I still love my ex. He was my best friend and still is. I was able to conceptualize his affair. Our relationship was hitting a dysfunctional level, and it doesn't justify it, but I know we were both troubled and suffering, self-destructing in our own ways. Don't get me wrong, I was devastated. Bedridden, not eating for weeks, required medical intervention. Crazy that was knocked me down and not the crazy stuff I deal with at work, ha. This situation now is confusing and still a betrayal, but different. I finally passed out last night after 36 hours of functioning. I don't know how, but sleep has been hard. I wake up grieving the life he promised and the pangs of betrayal. Knowing he's gone. It became my routine, but it's already getting better. Thanks to all you replying and providing support. I've taken the advice everyone has to offer, and I hope I don't hear from him again, but will continue to ghost him if he does. But for real that time, lol. I've never posted to Reddit before, but damn, this has been therapeutic, and I really appreciate the time you've all taken to read and comment.